So Brent's going to talk with us. He's with Bank 5-9. Some of you may or may not have spoken to Bank 5-9, but he'll share a little bit about his bank, kind of the opportunities, how to get in touch with him.
Sorry about that. I'm on my phone here.
Cool. You made it, man. We're here. So glad to have you on. These are some of our mansion builders here. Everyone who should be on the call is kind of in the front side of the process here, looking to hear from banks, looking at land, going under contract, getting all their ducks in a row.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's the right time to be on the call, I suppose.
Yeah. So if you like, just go ahead. People have a good understanding of what SBA is and all that kind of stuff, but I would introduce yourself, the bank, where you guys are located, all that kind of stuff, and then we can open up to questions.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. So Brent Benjamin, working for Bank 5-9. We're kind of a plain vanilla commercial bank, community bank. We're headquartered in Wisconsin. I work out of the Milwaukee market, but I lend nationally. Very involved in all the government guaranteed loan programs for small business. So we do a lot of SBA, USDA, some other programs as well, all in the senior housing market. We're about a $2.5 billion bank, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually kind of a small banks. Comparatively, Wells Fargo is like $1 trillion bank. So if that puts it in perspective. So we're a smaller community bank, but we're very active in SBA nationally. And I was gonna share my screen, but we're always up there in terms of the volume on both SBA 7A and SBA 504. You can kind of find those things on the internet anyways. But just to show you who's active in the market. And I got a chance to talk to Brett a couple weeks back, just kind of understanding the program that they have and what you guys are all doing. I keep wanting to, associate it as a franchise, even though it's not. I think it's a really good model that they've got going on there in the way that they've set it up. And obviously had a lot of success. So we'd like to hopefully be a part of that going forward a little bit. So the main programs that SBA is going to offer here are going to be 7A, which you guys are probably most familiar with. It's the most universal, I guess, or the most ubiquitous loan program out there. A lot of banks are focused on 7A. That's an insurance-based loan program. So the government's providing the bank with a percentage of guarantee against loss. And in exchange for that, the government gets an insurance premium, which is called a guarantee fee. That guarantee fee is going to be financed into the project. So if you want to borrow $1 million, you're going to really only get about 980. 20,000 would go off into the kitty. And then, it's basically the insurance premium, which you would pay back over the 25 years. In exchange for that, you're going to get, low down payment option. So a lot more leverage than a conventional loan is going to give you. Also, a little bit more credit friendly to sort of startups or folks that aren't, very ingrained in the industry yet, or what could be considered like higher risk products or higher risk businesses are going to get a little bit better treatment using an SBA product just because the bank's mitigating some of our risk. That 7A product's super flexible. So land, building, equipment, working capital, everything that you need can be financed under that. And generally speaking, if the majority of what you're doing is real estate, which it sounds like it would be in this case, they're going to give you 25-year payback terms. Additionally, which is not common with conventional loans, there's going to be no balloon on that 25-year loan. So at no point in the business are you going to be forced to either refinance, renegotiate, or pay that debt, which is usually it's not a big deal. It's only a big deal like When I got started in banking in 2008, a bunch of banks started calling notes in, like even if they were good, um, which doesn't happen very often. But if you had an SBA loan at that point in time, there's no way they could call the note unless you weren't, sending in your financial statements. Essentially, is all you have to do, and keeping insurance. So that's a nice benefit to have. The other benefit, if any of you were in business during like the COVID era, they ended up doing a lot of help through the SBA for businesses. So not only PPP, which was a direct cash injection for employment, EIDL, which was a disaster loan that you could have got, but also if you had a 7A loan, your payments would have been made for you for somewhere between like I think it was like 9 and 20 something months. So they provided a lot of support during that downturn, which definitely in this industry was a big deal. Because just with COVID, there was some struggle to keep your clientele. Um, on the other side of the SBA world, there's something called a 504 loan. It's a completely different program. Operates through what are called certified development companies, or CDCs. Those are state by state based organizations that are basically partnering with a bank like Bank 59 to do what amounts to essentially like a bond deal. So the 504, you get a first mortgage from the bank. Bank makes a second mortgage. So usually it's a 50% bank, somewhere between 30 and 40% on that second mortgage. And that 30 and 40% of the deal eventually gets sold off as a bond. So um, different system under 504, but the government again is supporting the project by taking on the second mortgage piece, so it makes it a little less risky for the bank. That bond is also very attractive financing, so it's going to be a 25-year fixed rate, generally lower than market. So I think the last one was 5.65% fixed for 25 years was the effective interest rate that you would have paid in the November bond sale. So those CDCs partner with the bank to kind of approve everything ahead of time. And then once your project is built, that second mortgage slice goes and gets sold off as a bond. So really, really very nice financing. Also allows for high leverage and gives you that long-term fixed rate, which brings some stability to the business versus 7A. Generally, you're going to find more floating rate debt. On the other side of the coin, 504, because it's set up as a bond and a fixed rate product, it's going to have a longer prepayment penalty. So it's meant to be something that you put in place and keep for a while. If you end up wanting to sell or refinance, like fairly early in the project, there is a fee associated with that. Right now, it's about 4% in the first year, and then it steps down over time. So I threw a lot out there. Happy to talk more about myself. Been in the industry for 16, 17 years at this point. Happy to talk more about, the bank or SBA, or just open it up to any questions you guys might have. I think sometimes that's more constructive. I see Doug's ready.
Hey, Brent. Yeah, thanks for coming and talking to us, brother.
Yeah.
Quick question. I've done some digging with AI, and I just want to confirm it with someone who's not flawed like
Sure.
AI is. Veterans, are veterans given any decrease or elimination of the guarantee fee with the SBA loan?
Yeah, so great question, Doug. I appreciate that. There has been a time in history where there were fee reductions for veterans, and there were they still do give you priority processing. So you're going to get like front of the line type of stuff in terms of like, they had to shut down and there was kind of this backlog, like all the veterans are going to go right to the front in terms of timing. But as of right now, there is no specific fee reduction or interest rate benefit from a veteran standpoint. Bank 5.9, we like, I mean, we can't really discriminate based on that in the positive or the negative. So we like it for our stats. We do like sometimes run some things where we'll try to give you like a fee waiver on your appraisal or some kind of credit, just to, thank you for your service. But nothing like particularly exciting on that front. Similarly, female owned, again, like we can't discriminate positively or negatively on that. There's not any specific benefit for female owned. We like to have it on our stats that we have veteran owned businesses and female owned businesses, minority owned businesses, but there's no specific like advantage given. It's more of a level playing field on that front.
Awesome. Cool, man. I appreciate the elaboration on that.
Yeah, no problem. Derek, I see you're ready for me. Go ahead.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Couple questions. What level of risk would you consider these deals for first-time operators? And what's your bank's average sort of deal size?
Yeah, great questions. So from a risk perspective, like fortunately for me, hopefully I'm not replaced by AI anytime soon. It's going to be like a pretty specific look. So we're going to look at, your background, your assets, your income, location, cost of the deal, public pay, private pay, supply and demand. Like in fact, like there are times when we might even want feasibility study if we're kind of unsure of the marketplace where you're going. I would say on the risk spectrum, like a normal bank's going to consider senior housing a little bit higher than average, just in general. But we're in this market. We're using SBA to mitigate the risk. We do a lot of these deals. We like it. Part of being involved in the industry is that we're going to know other players. So, if something doesn't go well, one of your counterparts might come in and say like, well, I'll pick that up. Like we're doing well. We'd love that. So, there's some risk mitigants that the bank's looking at that way, where we don't see it as super high risk. If you look at like cap rates, for senior housing though, they're going to be a little bit higher, right? This is not an apartment building. There's a lot more to it. You're going to have services. You're going to have, different things to deal with in running an apartment building. So the cap rate's going to be a little higher, which indicates maybe a little bit more risk. And then, sorry, was there a second part to your question? I apologize.
Yeah, your bank's sort of average SBA deal size.
Oh, yes. So that's a great question. So I'd have to look it up to get you an exact, but I'd say, so 7A loans, they're going to have a maximum of $5 million unless you're a manufacturer, which they just came out with, and increased to $10 million. The only reason I bring up the manufacturing thing is a lot of people in the industry are hoping that maybe that slides up to $10 million for everybody else because of that manufacturing increase. On the 504 side, there's also a $5 million maximum, but that only applies to that bond slice. So you can actually do pretty big projects. If you remember the structure on that, it's 50% bank, 30 to 40% SBA bond. So like you can do a 10, 12, $15 million project with that. And then there's green loans as well. If you do solar or something like that, it actually kicks that limit up as well. Bank 5.9, we're dealing like, we're trying to, be somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1 million in terms of our like quote unquote minimum. We do a lot of small loans though. It's usually in combination. So like for instance, if you wanted to do a 504 project, I didn't get into it, but that program will only finance land, building, and equipment, and everything associated with that. So like architects, engineers, stuff like that. They won't do specifically like working capital though. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, 504 is what you want, but you also need working capital. We'll do both. We'll give you a 504 loan, and then we'll give you a 7A loan. In that case, the 7A loan is going to be quite small, and that's going to drive our average down on our average deal size for 7A loans. Does that pretty much answer what you're looking for there?
Yes, pretty much. Thanks.
Perfect. Edwin, I see you got your hand.
Yeah, Brent, just wanted to put a face to the name. I'm gonna send you an email. I'm very much in the thick of things right now to start looking for a lender partner. I am looking at several, but love
Sure.
to add you there and see what you guys have to offer.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So your contact info, is someone going to email it out?
Yeah.
I'll make sure it gets out there.
I was going to say, I can maybe, is there a chat feature on here? I
Mhm.
apologize. I'm on my personal cell
No
phone. I couldn't get on there, but let me see if there's a chat.
There is. And while you're going, I can type it in here on the chat. And then
Okay.
again, for everyone, I'll show you where we're going to put it in the portal with all the contact info.
Great.
Perfect. Doug, I see you got another follow-up.
Yeah, buddy. When you mentioned the green loan, is that a tack on top of, like, say if I go the SBA 7A route, or I do a mixture of a 504 and getting a loan from you guys on the working capital, is that green loan stacking on top of that to cover that type of stuff?
Yeah, great question. So my, save the planet, right? Like, I'm all good with that if you want to do that. But my general business recommendation is that don't do green unless you need to do green. I mean, if there's a business case, right? Like, they had these subsidies before, so there was kind of a business case if you're getting the subsidy to maybe want to do it anyways. But basically what green is once you hit the limit, you might go to the bank and they say, hey, we'd really like to do this as an SBA, but you don't have any more limit. That's when you would go back for the green loan. So this is going to be on project number, I mean, if you went 504, it would be on, and I know kind of like the size of the deal you guys are doing. This would be on like project number 4. You might look at green, something like that, if you're doing all 504s. If you do a 7A right off the bat, then you could probably fit one 504 for your second project before hitting your limit, and then you would look at green. The other option you have too is you could do a 7A and then you could take it out with a 504. That's an option. Sometimes that's compelling, but I mean, I'm getting way far into the weeds here, so I apologize. But then you got to look at, what you're paying to get out of the 7A and get into the 504. A lot of times, the only time that makes sense is if you also want to do some cash out, or if you're getting a big rate reduction, then that can make sense too. But I would always, take a look at that and give you an honest opinion. Just like, hey, I know the rate's half point less, but I would say hold tight here. We'll do the math together and make sure that sort of thing makes sense. But green's going to be a little further down the line. If you had some inclination that you wanted to put some solar or some geothermal or something, like if there was something that really financially made sense anyways, then I could tell you, like, okay, let's add on the green business here because that could be advantageous. I just haven't seen the economics make that really make a lot of sense. So I probably wouldn't recommend it right off the bat.
Awesome. Thanks for that, man. I appreciate it.
Shondell, I see. Shondell and somebody else. I can't read it.
Hi, Brent. Nice to meet you. It's Shanette.
Good to meet you.
Quick question for you. Do you have a recommendation between 504 and 7A versus a combination?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's going to depend a little bit on your circumstances. So, if you have, 504 on so basically one major thing, which I probably didn't bring up here on 504 and I should, is the minimum down payment on a 7A is 10%. The minimum down payment on a 504 is also 10%. However, if you're not currently in the industry for 2 years as an operator, they're going to bump that 10% to 15%. And if you are building what they consider to be a special use property, which unfortunately they consider this to be special use, they're going to bump that 15 up to 20. So if you have 20% to put down, then a 504 7A combo may actually be attractive where you could, let's say, put 20% in, but then get a bunch of working capital back where you sort of end up with 10% in, if that makes sense. But if you don't have that downstroke for the 20, you're probably going to lean more towards the 7A. Then the other things we're going to look at are like, 504 is more of a fixed product, fixed rate. Is that something that's like appealing and make more sense, or is floating rate attractive to you right now? Like you wouldn't mind if you think rates are going to go way down. Of course, the reverse of that is always they could go up, right? So we don't exactly know whether they're going to go down or up, but those would be kind of some of the things that I'd be looking at. And then, what's your long-term plan? Like if you're just going to own one, 7A is not really a problem because you're not going to hit the limit. But if you're saying, hey, I'd like to do this, I'm going to save all my money and do another one within a short amount of time, you might want to look at 504 just from being able to get that done over and over quickly without hitting the limits. Or you might say, we'll do the first one 7A, and then we'll look at 504 once we have 2 years in and can go from that 20 to 15% down payment. So I guess it's a long-winded answer to say, usually I say, send me your personal financial statement, show me what your, project budget is, like, how much you're spending on each of the land, building, FF&E, soft costs, working capital needs. And then I can kind of say, all right, well, you could do it this way, or you could do it that way. And I would work with you to find the best route. That's actually one thing I was telling Brett on our initial call was like, a lot of lenders are going to steer you a little bit towards one or the other. Usually it's 7A. And the reason is that that's just their model. That's how they get paid best. That's what their bank likes. And that's fine. I don't think 7A is a bad product at all. I've done a lot of 7A loans. But sometimes they'll just, even if 504 is better for you, they might push you more towards 7A, which again, not the end of the world, but we're more product agnostic. So we'll do like either one, doesn't matter. Or a USDA loan if it's rural, or other options as well.
So you mentioned the 504 prepayment earlier. Can you go back to that? How does that step down and how does that go?
Yeah. So there's two loans in a 504, remember? There's the bank loan, which is going to end up being 50% of your project. And then there's what ends up becoming the bond, which is going to be like 35% of your project. So again, I apologize. This is very much in the weeds, but the bond, when I quoted that rate of like 5.65%, so they sell the bond once a month, every month. Everybody that's bond sells in that month, they get the same rate. The rate they quote, which you can find on the internet, that includes their fees. So that's an effective interest rate, that 5.65. The actual note, like when you sign the paperwork at the closing, it's going to be a lot lower than that. Like it's even lower, but let's just use 5% just as a base case. The prepayment penalty is going to be based on that note rate. It's going to be 100% of 1 year's interest in the first year. So if it's a 5% note, that's a 5% penalty. And then it's going to be 90% of 1 year's interest in year two. So if it's 5% and it's 90% of that, it's going to be 4.5% in the second year. So the step down would be 5, 4.5, 4, 4.5, 3, and then so on and so forth until year 10 when there's no penalty. The bank's going to similarly have some sort of prepayment penalty, and it's going to step down over time. Ours starts at 5%. The reason that we have to do that is the 504 first is a very attractive asset to banks. They love that because it's a low loan to value and secured by a fixed asset. And so if we don't put a prepayment penalty on it, what tends to happen is a lot of other banks will basically come in after the construction, after the bond sale occurred, which is all the risky part, and they'll try to steal that. And so over time, banks are like, well, we have to protect that for a while because we took the risky time frame. We want to be part of the longer term plan.
Mhm. So this is a little bit in the weeds follow-up question, but
Yeah.
so for me in my project, I have 2 buildings done. I
Mhm.
have essentially $7 million in debt, 5 on a 7A, 2 on a pari passu.
Yeah.
I want to add probably another $4 million in debt when I
Sure.
go into phase 2 and build 2 more.
Yeah.
What would be the best, or what would be a great structure that you would suggest?
Yeah. So so you've been in business for 2 years, obviously. You have all those loans been in place for at least 6 months?
Mhm.
Okay. So what I would do, it's a little bit out of order, but this is what I would do. If you came to me with that and you wanted to do a big addition or expansion, what I would do is I would immediately say, let's get an appraisal of what you've got. Because I would push you to do a 504 refinance of your existing loan. And I would say whatever the hard assets appraised for, which is land, building, and FF&E, let's fund, and I can go up to 90% on a refi with a 504. I would say let's give you 90% of whatever it appraises for on a cash out refi under the 504 program. And then whatever cash you get, you can put that towards another loan. And then I would suggest probably to do a 15% 504 project. And if you needed some working capital, I would do a 7A with it. That's probably what I would recommend.
So let's just throw some random or some best case examples out there. So let's just say my appraisal before I broke ground was about 12.2. So fast forward another 12.2 million.
4.2 on each one?
No, 12.2 for 2 plus the land.
12.2 million. Got it. And that was just the hard assets. That didn't include any business value.
There was a little bit of business value in there. So I think it was like
they're going to pull that business value out.
10 or 11 on hard assets.
Yep. Do you want me to use 10 or 11?
Let's go with 11. Well, let's go again. We're going to fast forward into the future. So let's just say it's 12.
Okay.
12
so it
in
appraises for 12
hard assets.
Yep.
Right. And then I need 11 total. Does that mean so I can take 90% of the 12?
Yep.
Which I don't know what that is, but let's just say it's
10.8.
Okay. Can I just do that? And I mean, I can come up with next 200 grand in cash. Can I just do that and not have anything else?
Yeah. So the only complication, yes, the answer is yes. The only complication to that is you're not even applying for the second deal. So we're not even going to bring that up with them at all. And then the cash that you get, depending on how you're structuring your, I don't know if you have entities for each location. And
I do.
so you have real estate holding and operating for each location. Okay. So the only caveat I would say is the cash out is not going to go to you personally. The cash out is going to go to the business. So you would then want to make sure and talk to your CPA, like, okay, if I distribute the money out of this business and I inject it into that business, just like confirm, no big tax implication, which I don't think there is, but just you'd have to have enough basis probably is what they're going to answer you. But I'm not a CPA, so I wouldn't get into that. But yeah, I mean, you could essentially take that cash, distribute it out, and then just run your own process with your cash. Because you're saying once you have 10.8, you would pay off your 7. So you'd have 3.8 and you could that's enough to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you could do that. you could do that.
Okay.
Now they're gonna limit the cash out by loan to value. They're gonna limit the cash out based on your cash flow. So I'd want to review that. Make sure you can cash flow the big payment, because they're gonna look at it not like, hey, I'm building another location, I have all this extra income. They're gonna
Oh.
look at it as your existing business has to cash flow it.
I see. Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
that's also got to work. And then the third thing is, you have to show like a business reason why you need that much cash. So,
Hmm.
so again, like usually we can do like 150% of last year's payroll. We can do like other secured debt if you have anything that you need paid off. So I mean, I would go through all these things and basically figure out
Okay.
your max cash out. But I wouldn't want to overpromise. I'd want to review the actual information and give you good advice. Now,
Mhm.
let's say they come back and say, hey, I can't give you 3.8 million cash out, but we can give you 2.8. It's not really the end of the world. I mean, basically you could take that 2.8, do a separate project with, 15% down using that 2.8. You'd end up in the same
Mhm.
place
Yeah.
in terms of your total debt and total equity. So
What would be best if for considering exiting the deal probably 5 years after this event with the lowest amount of prepayment penalty?
yeah, that's the tough part with 504. Is it rural?
No.
So, you may just consider doing are you exiting everything, or are you exiting one location and not the other? Do you know?
It'd probably be everything in that at the same time.
Got it. I mean, what you might want to try to do possibly is just go to a more of a conventional loan on the existing asset.
Mhm.
And then, you know, then your cash out would be more limited, right? So if it appraised for 12, you're not going to get, like most cash out on a conventional loan, they're going to max at like 70, maybe
Mhm.
75. So you might still be able to get enough cash there to go do the next one without having to inject any more personal assets. But you still may need to bring a 504 or a 7A into the new one.
Yeah.
Again, like, so then I would
That
look
would be
at
fine. I could bring a 7A and have the 36 months, and I'd be fine there.
maybe the 7A would be better in that case for you. If you got the conventional, which takes out your SBA limit, do a new
Mhm.
7A. It just depends on whether the cash out kind of makes sense and how the appraisal works. And I brought up a very important piece with the appraisal, which is they're going to value it as if you order like the bank should order the appraisal, because otherwise they won't let you use it. But if you have the right appraisal, which is going to be USPAP compliant, every appraiser is going to say, on this type of business, I have to give it 3 values essentially.
Mhm.
So land and building, some kind of FF&E value, and then some kind of going concern value or business value. When banks are looking at that and our regulators, they're going to strip out the business value from a collateral perspective. That's not really providing us collateral. Like if a bank loan is going bad, the business is almost always worth nothing. I mean, you might have some IP that somebody might want to buy, or you might have some, I don't know. It's very rare. So when the bank and the regulators look at that value, they're really looking at the hard asset value. It's kind of silly because it's like some of these, like, could you really move the business and keep the real estate? I mean, I think you could. So that's really what they're looking at. Like, what is the business value? And then they're not going to give you like that cash out number that I was saying, whether it's 90 or whether it's 70. They're going to be looking at the hard asset side.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate you going in the weeds with me on that.
Yeah, no problem. And again, like, I always reserve the right to like change my mind. I need to see all the data, right? Like,
Yeah.
if something says to me like, "Oh, wait a minute, you don't want to do that," like I might completely like throw a different wrench in the structure, but just based on what you're telling me, I think that would be the best. So little
Mhm.
caveat.
Okay, awesome. Well, great. Any other questions or things for Brent?
I know there's a lot of lenders out there. I think my big advantage, I'm turning 40 this month, so I've been doing it for like I said, about 17 years, but I also have 3 kids, so I'll be doing it for a while. So I'll be around through your growth phase, and would love to get a chance to work with you.
What is best way to reach you?
Yeah, so email would be great. I think Brett, I think my cell phone number is on my emails that I've sent you. I'm happy to put that out there in the world. Call me, email me. That's anytime. My goal is to try to get back to everybody within 24 hours. So that's kind of what I do. And yeah,
Awesome.
I think process wise, like once you know where you want to go, like I can always talk to people ahead of having some kind of land picked out. But before that, it's really like just collecting stuff ahead of time. We're not going to do any underwriting until we kind of know where you're going. So once you kind of have a spot picked out and you kind of have a rough budget idea, that's really when I would click in right away with the bank.
Okay, that makes sense. Shawnette, you got something?
Yes, I do. Sorry, Brent. Just a quick question. What is your application process and what do you require? Do you require like a construction bid in order to have our application in? What
Yeah,
are the
great
things?
question. So, so what I start with is I'm going to collect financials. So it's going to be like 3 years of your personal taxes. If you have another business, probably 3 years of that business tax returns. And this is all kind of SBA related. If we do something else, there might be some different things, but, and then we're going to want some kind of a business plan. It doesn't have to be like crazy detailed, but just a little bit of something about what you're trying to do. We kind of have a good idea, but we like to have you articulate that on a couple pages. Get some kind of resume from you, whether it's like a LinkedIn profile or just like a educational background. And then the biggest thing really is projections. So we're going to want 3 years of what you think the business is going to do. And there's some specifics of that too. We want the first year broken out monthly. We want a list of all the like assumptions you're making in putting that projection together. And then your project budget. So like, here's what I need for land. Here's what I need to build. Here's what I need for my FF&E. Here's my working capital need. I might need some interest during construction, and that can be like a rough number. Obviously, the more dialed in on that you are, the better. But we can kind of underwrite based on like, here's what I think it's going to go for, and then refine that over time. And then once we put you through the underwriting and Bank 5.9 says yes, we would then put a formal commitment letter out there. So make sure that when you look at that letter, in case you're not working with me, a commitment letter is very different than a proposal. Proposal is nonsense. I mean, I try not to do them, to be honest, because they're always going to say like subject to credit approval, subject to review. Like there are SBA lenders out there that they'll give a proposal to anybody that can fog a mirror, like here, just, tell me a little bit something, because they just want to like get in early. But once you have that commitment letter and you sign it and you say, yes, I want to work with you, we're going to take a little deposit. That deposit's going to count as a credit to you on the closing statement. But in the meantime, we're going to use that deposit money to order appraisal, environmental, title, legal, surveys, stuff like that. And during that process, once you sign the commitment, there's a bunch of SBA application paperwork, and the bank will work with you to fill all that out.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Greg?
Greg, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, real quick. Can you just run down like the timeline of, the process from start to finish, how much time we should expect? And also my second question, and this may have been answered earlier, I hopped on late, but what are your, on a 7A, what are your down payment requirements typically?
Yeah, I'll start with the easy one. So we're pretty much going with what SBA requires, so 10%. I was telling Brett, and this is good advice for all of you too, is like if you're getting some requirements from a bank and they don't seem like what you were expecting or what you're seeing out there, it's always a good question to ask, like, okay, is this a bank requirement or is this an SBA requirement? Because there's some things that like we have to follow the bank's, the SBA's standard operating procedure. We just have, it's going to be the same across the board, like 10% minimum. But then there are certain banks that will layer on more things, like which is their prerogative, of course. We try to stick to basically what the SBA requires over here, but we have some things too. So that would always be a good question. In terms of timeline, it really depends. I mean, you've got Brett and team behind you, so I think that's going to help speed things along. But the longer dated things that I see out there are going to be in some jurisdictions, like licensing process can take a little bit of time. So I'd be cognizant of that and make sure that's going on early. Development approvals. So, we're going to want the municipality to approve the site plan, to approve the building plan, to approve like all the MEP stuff. Like there's so many approvals potentially to get your, building plan approved. We're going to want all that approved before we close to give you the least risk in terms of like the possibility that something comes up that you didn't know about or they add something. So that's usually going to take the longest time. Absent all that, appraisals generally 3 or 4 weeks is kind of what I usually see. They're going to do an as completed appraisal, it's called, and on a construction deal. And so what they're going to want to see is some kind of budget from your general contractor, and they're going to want to see your plans because they're basically like imagining what is this going to be worth. And so once the budget and the plans are in place, add 4 weeks after that. And that's kind of the minimum or the shortest time frame. I know I'm dancing around a lot here. I would say like the fastest I've ever seen anybody kind of do something like this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 days. And, the average is probably somewhere between 60 and 90. And, if you've got a tough municipality in terms of licensing or approvals, like I've seen people go like 9, 12 months.
Okay, but if you've got your plan, if you've got all the things that you need, it's something could be done within 3 months.
Yep, that's good. Good. Yep, that's the goal.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's a good, I mean, that's a pretty average deal would be 3 months. I think that would be fair. A lot of times it just comes down to like responsiveness because the bank's going to hit you with a bunch of questions. And if you respond like within a couple days, like it's going to go fast. But if it's like 2 weeks in between, back and forths, it'll take a while.
We know how much those banks like the LOEs.
Well, awesome, Brent. I appreciate you being on here. Can we all give a round of applause or some fireworks for Brent?
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me, Brett. And like I said, email, phone, anytime. Feel free to reach out. Use me as a resource, and hopefully we can do some business.
Awesome. I'm sure we will. All right. Well, I'll put your contact information in the portal for everybody, and they'll be able to connect with you.
Perfect. I'll jump off, and you guys can finish up your call.
All right. See you, buddy.
Take care.
Thanks. All right. Good. Yeah, I like that guy. He's very cool to talk with. Again, our team's objective is to get as many options for everyone as we can. I know that there is back and forth where sometimes banks get busy and then we hear that they don't answer you right away. So the more that we can get some competition in there, the better. So in the last few minutes here, Doug, do you want to share what you were talking about on the Facebook group?
Yeah, sure, man. All right, so real quick wave cap. I'm out here in New Mexico. We have what's called gross receipts tax, and it is an additional about 7.2% tax on goods and services. However, out here in New Mexico, rent is excluded. So when I was developing, my specific strategy for owning and operating a mansion to include my legacy strategy for the kids, I had it start diving into how do I mitigate. I seeded, Google Gemini and ChatGPT with, you are an asset protection expert. You are an expert in, assisted living real estate development. You are a lawyer, all these things to try and get it dialed in. Anyways, what it's recommending is that I do what's called unbundled billing, which is essentially billing on a resident's invoice. It's two separate line items. You're going to have the care and you're going to have the rent, because in New Mexico, and it looks like as well as in South Dakota and Nevada, rent is excluded from gross revenue. So that if I were to take $8,000 a month and just split it evenly and saying $4,000 for care, $4,000 for rent, I'm only paying the New Mexico gross receipts tax of 7.2 whatever percent on the $4,000. So this is a drastic decrease in tax liability. So it looks like, and again, you're going to have to dig into your own state and the tax code there, but it looks like South Dakota has a similar sales tax that I do, where rent is exempt, as well as Nevada, the commerce tax, rent is excluded from that. Looks like it sucks if you're in Hawaii. It's there's no savings. Same with Washington with their B&O tax, and Ohio with their CAT. Rent specifically, it looks like rent in Ohio is included in taxable gross receipts. So I figured that's an important thing enough to share for any of you that are in the same predicament as me in dealing with an additional tax. Any questions on that?
Do you go and do you look at big boxes that like are a la carte and that'll have the base rent and then add the services and use that as kind of a justification if you got flagged?
Yeah. So I would have to demonstrate to the IRS that I am charging fair market value rent. So I would probably have to bring in a third party to validate that, or do very good due diligence on my end. I've seen everybody out here that they're either doing the tiered pricing or the a la carte pricing, and I can only imagine what they're paying in New Mexico gross receipts tax, because just on, I think my pro forma is looking like 9,000. I was looking at close to 100,000 a year in gross receipts tax. So that cuts it in half. But back to your question, I think I'm going to have some sort of third party come in and verify that my rent is commensurate with my pay or the care.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd probably have to get down into the weeds, on stuff like fixed and variable costs, and then really dividing out like the per resident per month, cost of rent, per resident per month cost of care. So
Can you invoice the 7.5% on the care side?
yes, I can.
Okay.
That there's some, it looks like you can't even do that in Hawaii. You're not allowed to bill that. You have to eat that cost. But yes, out here in New Mexico, I'm able to tack that on. So, and that honestly, that's the plan, is to bill gross receipts tax to the resident. But it's going to be far less.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Well, I'm
Doug,
glad to hear that. Go ahead, George.
Doug, how do they categorize what care actually is?
That's a good question, man. I haven't gone into that, to be quite honest with you. But the overarching premise of New Mexico gross receipts tax is anything, any good or service purchased in New Mexico is subject to that tax, with rent being the exclusion. So, you know, if it's not rent, then it's getting charged GRT, which the reason I know this is from my midterm rental. I Airbnb'd it like for 6 days and hated it. So I just went back to midterming it, and I didn't have to pay gross receipts tax. And that was even confirmed by the, you know, when I called the tax assessor, you know, confirming that it was greater than 30 days. Like, of course, there's some premises that are going to drive you into what is actually rent. Like, someone's probably going to have to be there for 30 days or greater to constitute rent and not a short-term rental. But I don't think we're going to have that problem.
Mhm.
Good seeing you, George.
Nice. Anybody else want to jump in on this?
Just researched it for Texas, and I'm sure you've already done it, Brett, but it looks like we don't have something like this, but we do have the franchise tax. But you gotta be over 2.47 million for the year to have to pay that. And then, so it's a great idea. Once again, split the business. If you're gonna do 2 mansions into 2 separate businesses, and you'll definitely be underneath that. At
Mhm.
least that's what I've seen. I don't know if you've researched it or not for Texas.
Yeah, as long as I keep those entities separate and don't go over that. But I would definitely talk to your CPA on those kind of things. But that's general rule. Separate those operating companies, and specifically here in Texas, you should be good on that.
Yep. Other than that, man, married 19 years today. We signed our purchase and sale agreement today, and we are meeting with the development review committee today. So this is the best damn anniversary I've ever had. So yeah, it's gonna be a busy one.
That's fantastic, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Looking forward to getting the show on the road, and got a whirlwind ahead of us for the next 6 months. I'm gonna have to reach out to Brent and the folks at Live Oak. We're gonna have to run multiple attacks to get all of this stuff done in 6 months, because we haven't had to put any money down on the land. They're holding it until we close with the SBA. So yeah, it's gonna be wild. Keep you posted.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So, just so everyone knows, in the portal, there is a document, and I'm just going to share screen to show you guys so everyone's clear on this. If we go into downloads, master list, and in the funding section, let's see here. One of these here is oh wait, no, let's go down to lenders. Lenders. It's one of these guys. List of preferred lenders. Here we go. All right, so there is Live Oak on here, Lexicon, Coastal, those 3, and we will add the new one here at Bank 59. So that is where that all is. I would encourage you to reach out to all of them, and it's never really too early to do that. Well, that wraps us up for today.
Hey, Brett, can I ask a quick question and maybe
Of course.
have like another minute or 2 minutes of discourse?
We can go over in orders. What you got?
Yeah, I want to see if how you guys are kind of planning on your price strategies. And I say it for this reason. So in our market, we're seeing what they call all-inclusive, 7,000 to 7,500 right now today. But it's not all-inclusive because there's add-ons that they just don't tell you about until you start diving deep with them. From a psychology standpoint, because we're offering a premium product and really a premium service, are you guys planning on pricing competitively with big box, or really separating yourself and making a statement in the market and pricing maybe 1,000 above big box?
Right now, so we are at 85 at Berry Springs, and I think the highest in our market is probably 10,000. So really, we're probably going to fill up and then bump it to 9 and then slowly creep it up. I can get 10,000, but now we have 48 rooms. So if it was 16, it's no big deal. I'm still trying to learn, what can I do with 48, right? What does that math look like? How high can I push this in order to do that? I do believe we'll be at 10 in the next year or so, but then I'll open 2 more after that. And so how will that affect it now that I'll have 80 beds in this city? How full can I keep 80 beds at that kind of price point? So I think it's kind of a balancing act. If you're opening up 1, man, maybe you start a little light, but I don't have any issue with people, at least matching the highest in the market. As long as your care and your staff and your reputation is strong.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. All fair points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, George, what I'm seeing out here in New Mexico in the Albuquerque Rio Rancho area is like the high end big boxes, high end with air quotes, is between 12 and 14,000. And I'm thinking the smarter play is to enter the market at 9 and aggressively ramp up, as we start to fill, and easily stabilize at 10. I have a friend who's running one of the big places, and he's like, yeah, we just bumped our rates to 10,000 for memory care. But yeah, they're not even at the top end of what can be taken there. So, and I mean, I think there's something to be said about, the luxury approach. If you're going luxury approach, I mean, throw down on, higher costs for the food, throw down on blowing the caregiver pay out of the water. Maybe even put a few more requirements on it, like CNA and stuff. But there's all sorts of ways to attack that premium market.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate your feedback.
George, you said something else about the competition being less transparent, and that's the case here. And even Mandy, when they're touring, they'll let them know, like, hey, we are really 85. The only exception is lawn. And they'll just be pretty blunt and direct. They're both trapping you when you go to other places, and they tell you it's really 75 or 75 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I didn't take it that way. Usually when somebody tells you all inclusive, you just assume, and it was just by chance that I just kept asking questions, and then they started mentioning additional costs. And, from a strategy standpoint, so I know seniors are going to go there and they're automatically going to pay the $7,500 a month in rent. But then if there's, extra baths or extra feedings that are going to cost them another $2,200-$2,300 a month, it really does warrant, because we would be completely all inclusive. It really does warrant, I guess, a higher value from us, as opposed to, I don't want to set, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't want to set my rates at 7, by the time we open, the rates will be at 8,000. And I don't want to set my rates at 8,000 if I know that somebody's going to go there and they're going to get a lesser standard of care, than they would if they came to us. And then they're going to pay premiums for all these extra services that we would include it. And that's why I feel justified in maybe asking, if the market's at 8, asking 9. But yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it. Now, and I think you made a really good point that, you know, as you start opening up all these extra mansions, you have a lot more beds to fill at a higher rate, and that could become more challenging.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And when I said that in my market, the high is 10, that's the sneaky price. That's not the upfront price.
That's not the upfront price.
That's the what price?
That the sneaky price that they
Sneaky price
get
that
you on later.
they get you on later.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any thoughts or feedback on how you guys are thinking about this?
Yeah, George,
Yeah,
my
George,
my secret
my
shopping
secret shopping,
saw the same thing.
saw the same thing.
You know, they give you a kind of a
They give
lower
you a
number,
kind of
and
lower, and then
then as services are needed, the price goes up.
it goes up.
And I saw firsthand my own mother. So
So,
um, I think we've talked about it before. I think if you're in a pretty large market, that 8,000 number is probably where things are for what we're offering.
Hey George, just to chime in on us over in New York, our rate is anywhere from, we have a large rate of 8,000 or 9,000 to like 14,000. We're pricing ourselves at 10,950. So kind of just a median range between the lowest and the highest.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be.
Yes, I wouldn't
I wouldn't go to 75.
I wouldn't go
I'd be at least 8, maybe 85, and you'll see when you build it. It's gonna be grand. It's gonna be big.
Mm-hmm. Hey Brett, how are you strategizing price increases with Berry Springs?
We'll do. Mostly, we just wait for the turn. We'll bump a little bit here and there. I have a hard time with it, honestly, because people budget for this, and this is what they want to do for the rest of that mom's life. So I try not to bump, $250, $500, something like that. I try not to get them in low and then gouge them on year 2. I don't think it's good. Mostly, we just wait for them to pass, and then we will creep up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this is all good information. I appreciate it. Just helping us plan, because we're working through our pro forma as well, and we just want to kind of create a worst case scenario, but then maybe try to figure out what's realistic. I don't want to push the market too much, and I don't think any of us do, because it'll take longer to fill those beds. But yeah, just interested to see how everybody else is approaching this.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Fantastic Friday. And then I'll see you guys on the next call.